Very much, Kofi, for exposing what ZRC, has been doing and all the expectations that are there for now delegating and running these four geographic domain name in Africa and the potential. Well, I've seen much potential here in what we've been hearing, for our three panelists. And now it's time for some discussion and also some clarification if you need one, or if you want also to make any specific observation. So the floor is yours, and then we'll be taking the first row of questions now. Okay, we have Mark. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Elkins. I run an ISP. I'm not an ICANN accredited registrar, but that's a different story. But I am accredited, or I do registrations. I am a registrar from a CCTLD point of view. A question for Jeremy. As far as I'm aware, all the people who are running CCTLD type systems, automated systems around Africa, tend to be using an EPP based system, FRED, COCA, the ZACR software. You're running JSON instead. Can I ask you to explain why you're running JSON rather than, say, EPP, which seems to be the standard registry portal, which simply makes life much easier if there's a sort of generic type 1 system? And can I also ask, when do you expect, or when can I, as I have a .tk and a couple of others, when can I expect you to offer DNSSEC?
Thanks, Mark. So to answer your first question, actually, we've supported, we actually already have a few EPP registrars, and we've had them for many, many years. Recently, we decided to put more emphasis on a simpler version of EPP, which is a simple API. It's basically a stripped-down version of EPP. The reason is that although on one hand it does, make it a little bit more work for established ISPs and registrars such as yourself to implement, because it's slightly different than the traditional standard format EPP. It actually makes it much easier for lots of other people who are not traditionally registrars and who would find it difficult to just build an EPP service on their platform. It's a simple API implementation. We've seen that it's simpler to implement and that it's more inclusive. I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of lawyers, firms. They're doing trademark protection, intellectual property right protection. And those guys, they have no intention to build an EPP system, but it's not so difficult for them to implement this API. However, we realized that it is important to people like you, and so we're actually relaunching this this year, actually at this very moment. So we've had a few EPP registrars in the past, and we're going to have more in the future. Does that answer your first question? Okay, thanks. Yeah, the second question was about DNSSEC. This is also something that we fully support, that is totally possible for us to do. It's not a lot of work, but we've delayed launching this because of bandwidth issues, actually. As you know, Freenom is the operator of .tk, and we have 24 million domain names. And it just takes a little bit more.
Sorry, you're based in Holland, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you have a bandwidth problem?
Well, we have nodes all around the world.
We can have bandwidth problems in Africa. You cannot have a bandwidth problem in Holland.
Sure. No, I'm not talking about Holland. I think you're right. We have a very fast internet exchange point, so we don't have a bandwidth problem in Amsterdam, but we have DNS servers in many other locations that can cause a problem. And also, as you know, we support a few African CCTLDs currently, and their local bandwidth is is a factor, and we just try to make it easy. To be honest, it's not like we don't want to. We actually are going to also deploy it in the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months. But it's also, for us, it was not really a priority so far because the demand is just so small. And even if we do deploy DNSSEC instantaneously, we're not sure that we're going to have 1% of our domains are going to be signed. So
I wouldn't say that's the point.
I know it's a vicious circle type of thing, but we're actually deploying this very soon, to answer your question.
Okay, which means that using EPP, you can use the DNSSEC specifications as per RFCs to manage DNSSEC, which then will make life easy for everyone using standards rather than invented standards.
Right, that's one way of seeing it. But what we're trying to do is really to broaden the population, let's say the pool of people who could potentially be registrars. I understand for people like you who've been using those standards for years, it's just much easier to use the same standards on the registries that you currently support than on the ones we're going to offer. But, we see this a little bit differently. There are a lot of people that already are registrars. They're not ICANN accredited registrars, but we consider them our registrars because they distribute our domains. And a lot of those are not as technically proficient as you, and we try to make it just easier. But yes, we will support EPP, and we will launch DNSSEC very soon.
Okay, thank you. You have answered.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for this, Jeremy. Before we proceed, please, I have a quick announcement. Do you have any regulators from Cameroon and Gabon in this room? Well, I think you are expected at the government working group at the Skybar. If you are not around, hope they haven't gone out for shopping. Huh? Okay, anyway, so the Gabonese and the Cameroonian delegation, especially the regulators, are expected up there. Okay, good. Yes, we proceed with questions and contribution. Yes, you have the floor, Iwaka.
Thank you, Chair. Boubacar Bari Wakran. I have a question for Kofi. Do you have any idea how long the technical validation process will or might take? And if yes, do you have a timeline? Are there any other steps to go through until domains can be registered under .Africa? Thank you.
Thanks for that interesting question, because many people are asking us since we came to attend the Afrinic meeting when we're going to get our DOT. So the DOT is almost there. The timeline for the PDT test is less than a month. Normally, it's an ICANN process. We were initially scheduled to run and to start actually the PDT testing last 6th of May. But due to some unlike circumstances within ICANN, we've been asked to put on hold everything till I can resolve some issues. So definitely we hope that within the couple of days or weeks, actually, we'll definitely launch .Africa. We're ready. The same technical platform we're gonna use actually for .Africa is the same we're using for the .cities. And for the .cities, all were really successful. So for .Africa, let us assume that, okay, well, by July, we can start launching the Pan-African top-level domain. However, during the last week of May, we had the political launch in Addis Ababa, where we actually raise more awareness around the reserve name list policies towards government and relevant intergovernmental authorities. So definitely by July, we hope that .Africa will be live and you can start registering your names under the domain. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this, Kofi. Of course, maybe a second, I should just quickly chip in that, well, this is a procedural issue, you know, this, because I can actually receive that ruling from the IRP, which is the Independent Review Panel, and that was ruling that we should suspend, you know, delegation of North Africa, and so due to some claims, you know, filed by Mrs. Sophia, actually. But it's a procedural issue, and it also is a proof that the ICANN, you know, accountability system also works, you know, because it's about openness, and the people, of course, can file whatever claim they want, but yeah, so the assurance that ICANN would like to give to the community is that first, the question is the scheduling. I mean, how much, you know, how long this is going to take, and told that, well, they'll make it short as possible, so that the procedure actually goes to its closure. So that's the message I have to. Now yeah, please go ahead for the question.
Thank you very much. My name is Guilain from Ricta, Rwanda. My question goes to Jeremy. It's about what is your responsibility in terms of developing local skills if you are taking away the management of the CCTLDs away of them? I understand the numbers are growing quickly. That's a good thing, but what are you doing to develop the local skills? Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, to add to that, maybe, no, it's fine, your question, but I also have a kind of similar question to you. Of course, capacity development at local level, but also the whole issue of, you know, having a business model for the African CCTLDs, if you have any ideas around this as well.
Let me answer Gisela, right? First. So thank you for that. I think it's sometimes maybe not so well perceived what we do, but we work in partnership with people who have responsibility to manage CCTLD, the local registry, and in the countries we currently work with, namely Mali and Gabon. We also have a partnership with Central Africa, but the operations are a little bit on standby because of the events in the country. So talking about Mali and Gabon, you know, we're basically working with a team that was formed just around the redelegation somewhere last year in early 2013. So some of the people of that team have had the chance to attend Afrinic meetings and various trainings in the ICANN and African community, and that's good for them, but there's just way too few of those people, and basically we've been asked to step in and to actually do some of the work. But our intention, and that's already what we're doing very actively, is to do a full competency transfer. We invite those people to our offices in Amsterdam several times a year. We fly to those locations several times a year. I was myself in Bamako in Mali 3 weeks ago, where I spent an entire week, and I think it's my third or fourth visit in the last 12 months. So we work very closely with those countries. You know, I think each country is responsible for determining, you know, where is the balance between having immediate short-term results and having long-term skills and competencies in-house. For some countries, it's worth it to delay the launch and the results and make sure that everything is run locally. And for some countries, they determine that their priority is to get live and to be able to offer domains very rapidly. And we're just happy to do that, of course. But you know, we are first and foremost a technical partner, and of course we have about 10 years experience in running CCTLDs, and we offer a lot of advice on commercial and policy issues. But we're just happy to share all this knowledge with our partners. And you know, we also offered other kinds of partnerships that do not involve this technical management. I think it's up to each one country to determine what they want to do and what they want to outsource, and then we'll see if we can manage that. Does that answer your question? And the second question was about a business model, right, for African CCTLDs. So what makes Freenom unique is that we are very strong advocates of a different business model for CCTLDs. I actually was at a similar panel last September in Greece that was organized by the European CCTLD Association, and my presentation was entitled "The Revenge of the CCTLD," because a lot of the noise has been about GTLDs recently, and mostly the new GTLDs, all those new top-level domains that are making a lot of noise, where big companies have poured a lot of money into and will pour even more money into once the marketing really begins. It already has started for some of them. But the CCTLDs have really been left behind, and especially in some regions like Africa. There are here 4 GTLDs, I believe, on the continent, but there are still 54 CCTLDs, and of those 54, you know, quite a lot of them are not really showing good performance. What we think is that it's not about technology. I mean, of course, technology helps, and people, skills, and all that helps. But we are quite happy to show a different model and to share that model with the CCTLDs in this community, and that is the model of free domain names. How it works is very simple. We give away free domain names to anyone for as long as they want. The only condition is they have to renew their domain once per year. So at the end of the year, you get an automatic email from the platform, from the system that says, hey, your domain is about to expire. Do you want to renew, yes or no? And renewal is always free, so all you have to do is click on the yes button and it's done. But just as for any other TLD in the world, we noticed that a certain fraction of those users do not renew their domains. So you will have maybe 10, 20, 25% of drop rate of domains that will not be renewed. And when that happens, what we do is we actually keep the domain live in the DNS, but we forward all the traffic of that now expired domain to a page with advertising. So it's quite a nice model because for the domain owner, as long as they renew their domain and they just use it normally, there are no ads, there's no obligation to do anything special. But the day they don't want it anymore, the day they don't use it anymore, then we start making money. I'm not talking about millions of dollars, right? I'm talking about a few cents per domain that expires. So it's really a numbers game. You need to have millions and millions and millions of active domains to start making money. Thankfully, that's what we've now reached, but it's, you know, it's a long road, and it's not for everyone, which is why we want to get everyone together. But back to this model, you know, we really think that free domains are awesome, and not just because we're the only company doing it, but because there is just massive demand for it. Just in Africa, to give you a number, just in Africa, our #1 CCTLD.tk has, I think, around 400, approaching 500,000 active domains. And, you know, TK means nothing to no one. It's just a random 2-letter extension. And we think that this is because, you know, I mean, I'm not taking a big risk when I say that Africans really want to express themselves and they like to communicate. If you look at mobile phones, there has been a huge revolution in this industry. The model of the mobile phone operators is very different in Africa than in Europe and in the US. In Europe and US, it's all postpaid. You pay for a subscription, you pay at the end of the month, and plus some extras, and it just works. And in Africa, the operators, they started doing this, but it didn't work so well. But the day they realized that they could give away free or almost free SIM cards with a phone number to people and then let them come later to buy credit later on, this industry totally exploded, and it also transformed the continent and communications. And we think that this model that is so powerful in Africa can also exist in the domain name sector. When you give free domain names to people, they just come to your website, they register a name, and then they start playing with it. And then you get the opportunity to offer other services, such as hosting, website building, consultancy, traffic, I don't know, all kinds of things. So domain names for us are really a door to the internet. It's an entry point. It's not oil and gas. You're not going to make billions of dollars, but you can get millions and millions of people online. So this is why we like this model very much.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for this. I wish the FCLD chair was around, because I really think that this issue of business model for African CTLs is important, and then we need to debate on those things. But yes, Maria has an insight. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, about the question on a business model for CCTLDs in Africa. I guess from my time at ICANN and then at the World Bank, I have some observations more broadly even about that. It seems to me that CCTLDs have a choice to make about where they exist on a spectrum, from at one end being a very high price and lots of administrative challenges to register a name, like the country I come from in Ireland, .ie. Even though it's improved, we still have generally a pretty high price point, and you have to go through a lot of hoops to prove that you are a business registered in Ireland and do lots of administrative stuff. And then at the other end, and so those registries tend to have a smaller number of registrations that cost more per registration. And then I guess now in the middle of the spectrum, you have a higher volume of registrations that cost less and have less of an administrative burden. And now that the free non-people are here, now you've got the free ones. But I think there was some research presented, I believe it was an ICANN event in Dubai at the beginning of the year, and a couple of CCTLDs switched business model from being this high cost, high administration model to more high volume, low cost, and greatly obviously increased the number of registrations they had in their own country. So in terms of revenues, they found they were doing very well. But the other advantage, I suppose, I think that they seemed to draw from it was that it really did an awful lot to stimulate national, local innovation in the internet, building DNS skills, just building even just broad awareness and interest in domain names in the country. And so that was almost that kind of higher volume model, even though it's not typically something that I think often a lot of governments like the idea of, but it really was, is proving to be something of a spur to innovation, a real something that pushes on local skills and development. So, and it's funny because I'm here to talk about cybersecurity, and typically in the cybersecurity side of things, you are, the registry with the fewer registrations, where it's harder to register. Of course, it's in some respects it's more secure because you have a lot more control over who your registrants are. It's a lot easier to find them, and so I think, and the higher volume maybe has some security issues. I know in the early days of .tk there were a lot of concerns that phishing and farming and all that stuff was coming from there. But I think actually there have been other studies that have said no, it's no more than your typical registry. So if I were to say, looking at the business model for a CCTLD in Africa, I think you've got three kind of measures that you want to look at it at, and you want to find your sweet spot between those three things. One of them is the financial side, so volume and price, and revenues. One of them is the security side, so the higher the volume, often the larger the number of security issues. It's a slight oversimplification, but it's a factor. And then I think the third and really critical part of this triangle is looking at, the interaction of the CCTLD on the national market, on local skills, innovation, business, and the internet ecosystem nationally. So I think I think each country has to look at those three criteria and find where their business model exists, looking at all of those three factors.
Great. In fact, the Africa DNS Forum that is planned for Abuja, the theme is monetization of the domain name, and I'm sure that those issues will also be discussed. Well, any thought? I see none from the community or from the audience, which means that, well, the message has been passed on quite well. Then I'll leave it to our panelists for the kind of last comments, before we break for coffee then. So who want to start? Yeah, Kofi, maybe you should start for your final comments and then.
Well, my final comment will be in line with the success of CCTLD operation, especially the African CCTLD. The critical issue is there's some existing successful model. I just want to point out the .co of Colombia. The success of .co is mostly attributable to a strong registrar base because the internet landscape is going to be more crowded with all those new GTLD coming up, .paris, .africa, .deloitte, and so many dots. How our African CCTLDs are going to compete and have a sustainable model within that landscape. So the important issue is how to develop that registrar base and engage more the reseller market through maybe the 3R model, registry, registrar, registrant, in order to make the business successful. Because with the new GTLD, the role of the registrar will be more prominent. And then there will be a great opportunity for African CCTLDs to actually get engaged through the global strategy under the .Africa top-level domain, because there's only the way they can survive within this tsunami. So definitely my call will be a call for action, call for inclusion, call for innovation, and actually call to move away from, let's say, routine and find a great inclusive model who can make those CCTLDs successful. Thank you.
So thank you very much for announcing this tsunami and for calling for action. And there again, I wish our FTLD chair was around, because these are quite interesting, messages and debate. But nonetheless, let me pass it over to Jeremy for his final comments.
Thank you, Pierre. I don't really have a lot of specific final comments, but I just want to thank the organizers, Afrinic, Djibouti Telecom, and everyone for organizing this. I have a booth now outside the coffee break, so if you have any questions or want to discuss anything with me, you're welcome to come and see me. Thank you.
Great. And yes, Maria?
Thank you, Pierre. So I suppose my final comment is an observation, really, and it's a question. It's how important do we think the domain name system is? With generic new GTLDs coming online and forcing competition with CCTLDs, we're all kind of making an assumption that TLDs are a really important part of most people's internet life. And obviously you can get to wherever you want to by using search, and the majority of internet users don't type in a domain name. I always do, but that's because I'm a purist. So I think if we are to believe, and I do believe, that the DNS is important, I think we have to look at what it's good for. And it's not necessarily especially useful for finding your way around on the internet, because you've got other tools that do that also. And a lot of average internet users don't really understand what names are anyway. I think if the DNS is important, and if CCTLDs are important, it's because they're important for identity and branding, I guess the stepsister of identity. And they are really important as drivers of national and local internet innovation. And I think they're really, they're names, they're parts of identity that people kind of group around and that really stimulate innovation and business ideas and forms of people's expression of identity. So, to me, my final comment really is that I think if we need to look at how CCTLDs are going to thrive going forward, I think that's what they need to focus on. Anyone can get anywhere on the internet. We don't need a TLD to do it. But what we really do need, and what the internet is always going to need, is ways to focus people's attention on who they are and what they want, and ways for countries and communities to bootstrap their own internet development. So that's what I would like to see going forward.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thanks to our panelists. I think they did have a challenge. They had to keep us awake, after this launch. I think they succeeded in. And I think also they provided us with food for thought, especially for the African sort of domain name, business models. I think quite important. And also we do have the contact for later, discussion with them if you feel like it. So I think with that, I think they deserve our recognition and a round of applause to them. And then we... Okay, and I think also we did well. We are on time for coffee break, if I'm not mistaken. So thanks for all.